Hello and welcome to Mostly Minnesota Music Podcast Edition. I'm Ann Tracy. I'm here with my co-host,
Heather Baker.
Yes, and we are here with a musician and a poet, and I think you wear several other hats that I look forward to hearing more about. We've got Christy Mary.
Hey, nice to be here. I'm really happy to be here.
Good, that's fantastic. Good. Well, I'm excited to learn more about you. So I'm just gonna be really blunt. Hey, tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, gosh, I've like you said, I do a lot of things, so it's really hard to boil things down real small. I'm local. I grew up in St. Louis Park, and went to college in Chicago, then moved back here for 4 years after, then out to LA for a couple of years, New York for 5 years, came back in 2010, didn't intend to stay, met my husband, of course, and ended up, now I'm in Northeast Minneapolis, and we have a little house and 2 kitties. I work in retirement. I'm a calculation consultant. My title is different, but no one knows what my title means. So I'm just a calculation consultant because I do spreadsheets, a lot of spreadsheets and other things. And then I do a lot of like we're here to discuss today. I do music and poetry and try to curate different kinds of events and art shows and zines and I help start churches, like newer churches, or I have in the past for a lot of different traditions or whatever, and kind of like more alternative settings, like in coffee houses or warehouses, or I think one of them was in the Lamb Hotel in New York or something. But so just kind of like a lot of different creative ventures. And I'm not doing so much of the starting new churches right now. I'm not. I have enough on my plate at this point.
Well, it sounds like that might be a lot of Zoom work with all of the restrictions that are in place.
Yeah. The only thing I do on Zoom lately, for the most part, is my friend Rose Zilka, who it's her birthday today, she started a puzzling group, which we call the Society of Puzzling People, at Eat My Words bookstore. And that was in person for a couple of years before COVID hit. And since COVID hit, I still host it the first Friday of every month virtually. So
what do you do? What does the puzzling group do?
We literally do jigsaw puzzles, but I mean, obviously,
jigsaw,
because we do different puzzles now because we're all on our own cameras. But if we used to just meet at Eat My Words bookstore and do a puzzle or 3 or 4 puzzles, if we had a ton of people, we've had 10 to 20 people before or whatever, but it's just a really great way to build community, and just the people are great. So
I bet that would be fun. I mean, because you have something to talk about, who's got the edge pieces, but then a lot of space for other conversation. That's a great idea.
We've learned so much. I mean, now, different people have their own puzzle superpower, and there's actual like roll up mats that you can put your puzzle on, or there's sorter trays. It's very exciting.
That would be, I used to do a lot of trivia, and it's funny because my trivia team, they weren't people I necessarily hung out with. And funny enough, we had a couple of different generations with us. So I knew everything that I'm like, oh, sports, that's you. Oh, music in the last 5 years, that's you. Yeah. So I bet with puzzling, you're like, oh, you, the one who can tell all the colors apart,
Yeah, or you're the person who can pick up that one piece and find exactly where it goes. Or, I can, people will do sections, and then all of a sudden I'll pretend, oh, this section goes over here or something like that. But and then there's, of course, Rose, she's just a super puzzler, and she likes the boring pieces, like when you get down to where they're all the same color or whatever, and she sorts them by size and kind of does her thing. She's,
Sky Queen.
It's amazing that most of us don't want to do that part, but she still will go at it and likes it. And
Like an active meditation.
yeah, and you're right. All different kind of generations and people who might not hang out otherwise, you know, or even meet each other. You've got college students, you've got, you know, older people, just kind of the gamut. So it's been
That's
really
fun.
nice. Not as many people have stayed doing it since we're virtual, but more, it tends to be sometimes more the people who were newer to the group or newer to the city, because before COVID, maybe they didn't have as much time to build their community. So
I bet that's a lifesaver for some
Yeah.
people, or not, or sanity saver anyways, you know.
right. Yeah,
Fantastic.
I've been the new person in so many cities that I can kind of relate with that. So yeah.
That's fantastic. That's cool. Cool. Well, it's super funny, interesting to hear about it, but I also, of course, interested in hearing about your upcoming album, your upcoming EP, Here For You.
Yeah.
That is some very serious stuff that you're pouring out for folks there. It's really powerful. Can you tell us just kind of what's your inspiration? And your voice on it is gorgeous. But I mean, you are really tackling some topics here.
Yeah, it's definitely saying some things. It was a difficult choice to kind of narrow. I didn't come to Matt, my producer, with, you know, I had one particular album in mind, and it had that first song, Naive, in that group of songs. But he kind of, you know, I had a whole lot of other things as possibilities. So I was like, this is an option. I've got all these kind of genres going, you know, direct to me if you want to. And so he just had me sing a lot of things to him. And then we narrowed it down to about 7 that he wanted me to, you know, choose your 3 to 5 from this group. And so I'd kind of gotten it down, but I wasn't really sure. And then my friend Liz Brosnan came over, and she was asking me some questions about the process of doing an album, because I had just gone in to start discussing it. So I kind of told her, you know, this is where I'm at here. And she asked me the question, what's the last song that you have written, or something, or how long has it been since you've written a song? And it had been so long. So what's crazy is the next day, or maybe a couple days later, I ended up writing Reach For Me, which is the single, and turned out to be the song that tied them all together.
Nice.
It kind of showed me that, you know, it's kind of about trying and taking risks and facing your fears and your failures, and, you know, going forward despite them, and also kind of community, being there for each other. One thing that kind of made me laugh after I had been listening to one of my favorite albums, Cold Snap by Weeping Tile. They were a Canadian band. Now Sarah Harmer does her solo stuff, but there was a song in that where she used a word in 2 different ways. You know, in one line it was joint account, in another line it was a joint that needs a light, or whatever. And she was just, you know, playing with the words. And I kind of thought, why don't I do that? I should do that. And then I thought back to this song, and I later on, and I said, oh, I did that, because I didn't just mean like reaching for each other in connection, but I also meant, you know, reaching on behalf of one another, like when we can't do it on our own. And it's been, now I'm feeling actually a little emotional, but it has been an amazing journey with so many people have gone above and beyond to help me, far and above what I could have afforded to do with us. And both, you know, starting with Matt, my producer, and then recently, and my friend Kelly Schneider doing all the design for the CD, and she did a beautiful job. And then I don't know, my friend Andrew recently, I was trying to do these little videos for the release, and I'm just using my phone, right? My husband and we're driving around town, or and they're terrible, but I did okay with like the first three. And then the fourth one, I wasn't, I had it in like 4 chunks, and then I couldn't get the chunks to line up or something. So I wrote my friend and I was like, I have terrible software. Is there free software that will help me line these up better? So he sent me a link to that, but then he's like, here, give it to me. I'll do it for you. He's amazing. So he threw in all this stock footage and like put it together as a beautiful whole and stuff. And I just felt like in so many ways, there were just people just rising up out of nowhere, like the universe coming together to, assist in the project. And so I just really felt like, and also, and that doesn't even include my husband has a friend, Jeremy Harvey from Dead Letter Records, and I was trying to figure out digital distribution, and I was so confused, and I'm totally a newbie. So he just said, oh, you could ask Jeremy Harvey about that. And I sent Jeremy some questions, and I also posted on Binders of Minnesota Music. And Jeremy ended up writing back and saying, hey, I could handle that for you. And, Dead Letter Records could just do that. I wouldn't charge you. Who does that?
Yeah, nice.
I just felt very just enveloped by the love and support of a lot of people in this process. Anyway, I've talked a lot. Do you want to know more about the other songs, or is there any?
You're so,
I'm using up a lot of time here. I know.
No, you're fine. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We got nothing but time, Christy. We're good.
We're all here for the.
Just hold on. I might have to fill up my water. Other than that, we're good. It's touching to see you have such an emotional reaction to this, because your music it's very intimate. It's very emotional. I mean, just to the sound of it. I feel like even if it weren't in English, if it were in some language that I didn't understand, and I'm laughing at myself because I'm like French. I mean, I have a French minor, but like French, but even if I didn't understand the words, just there's something very emotive about the music in and of itself.
Yeah.
But so as I said, I and Heather and I sort of talked about it. We're both like, oh, that gives you a lot of feels, that music. It really does. So it's fun to see you have that reaction to it too. I mean, obviously it makes sense, but so yes, please tell us more about more of the songs, because they're very.
Thank you. Speaking of the feels, I think the one song for me where it's the most obvious or the most piercing for me is the second song, I Wish You'd Tried. It's about somebody. I literally did meet them in a park. So it starts, I went to the park again today. I cried, and it was like remembering this person and their situation, and they were self-destructive in a lot of ways, and I kind of had to break off, hanging out with them. But the song just reminds me that I never heard the end of that person's story, and they were in such a dark place when we parted ways that it just breaks my heart. But so it was sad already, kind of. And then when Matt did like the first little guitar thing to set out the pre-production, he hit something, especially in the little instrumental he did before the third verse. He just hit something that just like hit me so hard that every time I would try to practice it, I would try to be practicing the vocals for all of my songs, but that was the second one, and I'd get all torn up, if I practiced it. So I was really glad when we recorded the last, when we did the final vocals for it, he skipped the instrumental, and I was like, oh, I can hold it together to do the rest of the vocals. But so that's that one. Naive, the first one, is kind of me kind of admitting I went into this relationship with open eyes that it could be a situation I'd come out of hurt, but I decided to take this risk anyway. But then here, kind of at a later time, like I don't feel like I'm getting the whole story and I'm willing to make it work. Like if we're both trying, and if I kind of get the honest what's going on here. But if not, I kind of, the end, I'm moving on. And I think when I wrote it, it was much probably harder to sing that part. But now it feels a little more triumphant. Like I made a healthy choice for myself at the time. And I'm proud of having done that. I wrote that song on the subway, I think in New York. I can still kind of remember like what station almost. I could see it in my mind. But yeah, so that's that one. And then there's two more, Peter's Lullaby.
I said the lullaby, yeah.
Yeah, and Don't Be Afraid is the last one. And those two are the oldest ones. Probably, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. Peter's Lullaby, I actually recorded a demo for in Hollywood with my friend Brian Cahew. And it was probably, it could have been like 2004 or something like that. And so I'd written it sometime before then. And I don't really remember what inspired it specifically. It does harken back to the biblical story of Peter walking, Jesus walking on water, and then Peter saying, if it's really you, tell me to come out to you. And so he kind of takes this risk, walks, has faith for a little bit, walks on the water, and then he sees the wind and the waves, starts sinking, and then he's like, help, and I just have this picture of, Jesus picks him up and takes him the rest of the way. But I think also, here's another one that kind of has double meaning, because I think in our relationships with friends or with lovers or with, whoever, we also pick each other up and carry each other the rest of the way when we're, putting ourselves out there and we're trying to do something that doesn't seem possible. So one of the really crazy things, I joke about this, I go to my church's Mercy Vineyard here in the Northeast, and this last year or so, I joke that I'm kind of been a prayer whore. I just ask for prayer for the APL. I don't know what I'm doing. Please pray for me. But in this one occasion that I was asking for that, and somebody was praying for me, and she and I was kind of talking about going the rest of the way, taking care of the rest of the tasks that I needed to do. And she started praying, and she was praying that exact story, and just Jesus, would you just carry her like you help take Peter the rest of the way or whatever. And I just stopped it. I was like, have you listened to my demo on my
Are you in my closet?
Because I was like, how? And then she's kind of looked like she almost felt bad because she hadn't, because I had posted a little bit, and she's like, oh no, I'm sorry or whatever, and it was feeling bad. And then I was like, no, because that's in that song, and actually when you look at that particular story, I think I mentioned kind of walking on water just once in the Reach for Me, and then the end of that particular story, he's saying don't be afraid or something. And so I'm just like, well, that kind of has a theme through it, and it just kind of made me feel like, oh wow, that seems really timely and something I needed to hear and to kind of internalize that songs being sung to me as well. And I think a lot of these, I needed them just as much as anyone who might be hearing them has needed to hear those kind of things. The last one, Don't Be Afraid. I've had moments where, because I deal with a lot of stage fright. So, I haven't done a lot of performing, but I was in a band called Old Souls in LA, in Hollywood. And I used to rate my shows. I wasn't the lead. I was one of the lead singers or whatever. It wasn't my music for the most part. Although we did do one song of mine, but I used to, after the shows, I would think, well, what percentage of the time was I absolutely terrified? And, 50% was a good show. So, so I sometimes would think to myself about this particular song, the Do Not Be Afraid, like, well, if I could just, sing that at the beginning of every show, or even back to myself, that you just begin at the beginning. You just do one thing and then the next thing, and you're not always perfect at the beginning. So, let there be a little messiness and all that. But yeah, so that's a little bit about some of the songs.
They're lovely because, as I said, they're very they're very intimate. There is kind of a theme of loss throughout a lot of them, but there's also that uplifting camaraderie in your down times. That seems to be another theme that that we can take. especially now with the time that's in it. For many, by definition, this is a low time for the world. It's just, but it's the camaraderie. It's the reaching out for others, and others reaching. Even getting to the basic, we put on a mask for someone else. They put on it's it's a powerful one.
Yeah, thank you.
No,
it seems strange that, because, somebody at one point had thought that I wrote it for the quarantine time or something, that was asking me, and I was like, no, I didn't. These were all written, before the most recent one, Reach for Me, was written in January, but for some reason they fit well for kind of some things that we need to hear right now.
Well, that's good.
So,
that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. But I to me, they seem like they were just much more personal than about this. But it's you always take what you always take your day into what you're doing. Like if I'm listening to music, it's if I've had a bad day, it's gonna speak to a bad day. If if I'm getting over a good night, it's gonna, whatever it is. So that's, and it's nice to have something that does feel so personal, but it is, it's music you want to give your full attention to.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
No, when you're writing, because you're a poet as well, do you come up with the lyrics first, or does the music come? How does that marry?
I suppose it depends, but a lot of times it's at the same time. Now and then a poem will become a song or something, but a lot of times it's at the same time. And most of my songs are written just a cappella. So I'm not an instrumentalist myself very much. Well, I should say I'm not a good instrumentalist, not an accomplished one. I would probably twang a lot if I tried to play my guitar in public too much. But so, yeah, it just kind of, my process is I just sing mostly. Now and then I've written some songs on guitar, or just, plunked some things out on keys. But it's definitely one of the reasons why I needed a producer, needed Matt so much to help kind of bring it to life. And he listened to, or he asked me a lot about influences and whatnot, and kind of listened to things that I was into, and just kind of thought and brought things together and decided the direction to go with it. And I think part of it was inspired a little bit by Peter's Lullaby. We already had a demo for, so that there was kind of the history of that one having keys in it, and the kind of feel that it had. And I think he kind of tried to give things a consistent feel throughout, and I think he succeeded in that. But yeah, so I really like the vision that he brought to it, and kind of married different elements. Some things that are a little more electronic, some things that are more acoustic, and somehow he just did it and it came together really well, I thought. So
Absolutely, just like magic. But
right.
how nice to, how nice to find a partnership like that with someone, because you said there is a very cohesive feel to it, but each song is very distinct.
Yeah. And Matt, I think I just came across something the other day. I remembered him being the first person I'd brought music to back when I was like 16. I think I feel like I even almost have a physical memory of holding the paper in my hand of like, this is the song. And I don't think we didn't record anything. I think maybe he gave me like chords or something on that. And so we didn't get together too much after that. So so I don't know, 30 years later, it's kind of nice to come.
Christy?
We lose her?
Okay, we just paused for a second. We had some little broadband issues, but now we're back. So we fixed everything. And you were just telling us about the music, but it might be a good time to shift, if you don't mind, to talk a little bit about your poetry too, because you have a book of poetry coming out.
Yes.
Coming out soon.
I do, yes. It's called Before Cancer Comes for Me, which is a really, exciting title. And I'm not actually expecting cancer to come for me, but I think kind of maybe it's fitting during the time of COVID that we are all contemplating our mortality a little bit more than usual. So the collection basically deals with poems that deal with like cancer, grief, that just kind of those sorts of stories, kind of about ways that I've encountered it. I mean, in poem form or narrative poem. And they were written all between, I think, 2012 and 2018. And the reason that I ended up, I think I had been sorting out some different poems that I had, and I had thrown these in, my grief/cancer folder, death, and at this particular time, a good friend of mine, Jessa Roque, who you have had here, and we did the Quarantine Dream compilation to kind of help support her and fundraise for her. So basically, we had been on a call recently for Jessa's birthday, and we were all brainstorming on ways that we could help her. And I had kind of had in the back of my head, like, I would really like to use this book to raise money to help people that are dealing with, crazy, medical bills and that, all that kind of stuff for dealing with cancer. And we've had, other friends dealing with cancer before, and unfortunately probably at some time in the future. And she's just at a really difficult time right now where they're not thinking that regular chemo can work for her, because it's a little too much for her body right now. So she has to switch kind of to look for either low dose chemo or other alternative treatments. And she mentioned there was this one treatment that the doctors had suggested she do it every week, but it was I think $500 a week, and she couldn't swing that. So she was doing it every other week. And when you're fighting for your life, you don't want to have to be worrying about the money. And so everybody was coming up with different ideas. Some were, saying, hey, I can make these special meals for you. And I'm like, I'm not a cook. That wasn't like something that I could contribute different things. So I was like, well, I do have this poetry chapbook that I've thought about using in this way, but I don't have the designing chops to get it to the format to submit it to. I think I'm going to use SmartPress or whatever. And I said, the designer that I usually would work with, my friend Kelly, she was still working on my CD stuff. So I couldn't give her really another project until she was done with that. And so I said, you know, if you have a friend who does design, who's looking for a way to help you and they would like to partner with me, I'm throwing that out there. And it just so happened that Sarah Beth Harishnik, she was the one hosting the call, jumped in and said, hey, you can send that to me tonight. And so since Jess's birthday last month, there was, you know, little time in between because she was kind of waiting to clear her schedule, but we've been working on, you know, making the last changes and hopefully are at our final draft now. And we're just hoping that we can put it out there, get folks to donate. And then I think we're going to do something like, you know, if folks donate $10 or more, they'll get the book. And Eat My Words Bookstore, actually, I talked to them, to Scott yesterday, and he said that they would put it out and that they wouldn't take any money from it other than, you know, just the taxes and any credit card fees, and everything else would go to Jessa. And yeah, so I mean, we're excited about the whole process, that hopefully we'll be able to help her. So
That's fantastic. That's very generous. That's fantastic to do. That's,
yeah.
and I have to ask, this goes from 2012 to 2018.
Yeah.
Did you have some personal experience with cancer in that time? Is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, some of it harkens back to before that time. Like I did have a roommate in New York for a short period of time, but we'd gotten close, and she had cancer before, and then she had it recur later after we weren't roommates anymore, and she passed away. And she was in her 40s. And then kind of during the 2018 to or 2012 to 2018, like my uncle, he was also a poet. He was actually really well, like he won a lot of slam poetry stuff down in Deep Ellum, Texas. He was kind of a card, and I was always kind of looking forward to, because he did eventually move up to Minnesota to help my grandmother when she was getting older. And I was always hoping, like, oh, we'll go do poetry shows together, and that would be so amazing. And we just didn't. He ended up getting sick, and we didn't end up to have that opportunity. But I got to spend a lot of time with him when he was in hospice and stuff, and kind of going through his computer and trying to find his poems and talking about things. And also my grandmother, when I was younger, I was about 16, I think, when she passed away from leukemia. And also during that span of time, my hair, it sounds funny, my hairdresser, Robert, also, he got pancreatic cancer. And that was, I mean, he lasted kind of a long time for having pancreatic cancer. Yeah. I think at the time I wrote the poem about him, it was 6 months in, and he still lasted some longer than that, it's such a fast moving cancer usually that right. I think that was really good for him to have lasted as long as he did. But yeah, there's just, and you know, a lot of people know about Ed Ackerson pretty recently. Yeah. And I knew him and liked him a lot, but my husband was a lot closer with him, and so that was really hard on Tommy. It was hard on me too, but I was, you know, less connected, less of a history. But yeah, so I think we can't help but kind of ask questions when we get into the places where people that we love are being taken away from us, and kind of trying to find our way through that situation. And also for those of us, even for those of us who have faith, that doesn't help some of the things. Like there are things that the faith helps, but there are immediate things in the present. You're still losing the person. You still have this great grief. You still have, you know, one of my poems talks about kind of even, you know, if I passed on and like I might be right next to you, but I might know it and you might not, and you have to live one day after the next, you know, and for however long. And I'm planning on living till I'm 100. So at the time I wrote the poem about my uncle, I was like, wow, so that leaves me about 61 years or so until I see you again, you know, so, but it's probably not a lot of time for you. But just kind of dealing with just the struggles that it brings, and just finding a place where there's hope, because even though just in the sense that there's that pain, but the pain is kind of also evidence of love having been there, and that's not without meaning. So yeah, so it's just kind of an exploration of a lot of things, and I'm hoping that other people, you know, can sometimes I think it's helpful when people can put into words what we're struggling with and we don't know how to process. So I'm sure there's probably other people who've asked the same questions and had the same, like, there's a poem called Mirror Girl, and it's kind of like, you know, I'm giving you permission to be angry, Mirror Girl, you know, to wail out your heart, you know, over the dead and the dying, kind of, and just like there's a time to be strong and there's a time when you just need to let it all out, and you need to process. And I think maybe as Minnesotans, we might be better than some at just like push them down and not always deal with things. And it probably causes us, you know, various problems, physical and otherwise. But yeah, so that's kind of the book in a very big nutshell, since I talked a little.
No, that's good. That's what we're,
Yeah.
but I like the idea of doing it, because unfortunately,
Yeah.
many of us are in a position, everybody
Yeah.
knows somebody who has
Right.
cancer, or has had cancer, or
Yeah.
has been a person who has cancer, or, I mean, it is so prevalent in our life. And I mean, the good news about it is that a lot of people have had cancer and they survive, and a lot of people unfortunately haven't. But it's a huge, so as you said, if you're able to put into words, you know,
Right.
as you through the poem give yourself permission for Mirror Girl to scream, you know, somebody else reads it and it's like, oh, there's a great comfort in knowing you're not the first person to go through this. You're not the first person to have these questions. You're not. And as you said, even if you are a person of faith, it's it's
still
difficult
hard.
times. Yeah. So that's and again, it's you are unafraid of the hard topic, my friend.
I have been told that before.
Well, I applaud that. That wouldn't, I mean, it's, you know, I'm much more Minnesotan than that. You know, but that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy it. You know, I enjoy it is that, but you know, I don't appreciate it. I mean, it's especially something like that, because it's, especially when you have those darkest days, it's super valuable to know that and for better or for worse, it is a part of life. It's not my favorite part of life, but
no, for sure not. But we're all there at some point. So.
Well, and as you said earlier, I think that there is, people are dealing with it on a very different, it's the same but different with COVID stuff.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I don't know what to say about the COVID. I did have one friend that did pass from New York, that did pass away kind of early on in it, and that was pretty hard. But yeah, it's just what we can do is just be as careful as we can, and you
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
do what
Absolutely.
we can to protect each other. But yeah, there's so much emotionally going on with so many people. You know, I've even, you know, recently I had a little bout of vertigo and have had some, you know, various physical symptoms kind of from the stress. And I think, you know, a lot more people I think are going through, you know, a lot of symptoms, both physically and in our mental health, just dealing with the different situations we're in, and the stress and dealing with facing, you know, our own mortality at the same time as, you know, loneliness or just so many things, just the longing to connect with people and to be able to express and kind of work through our own emotions. And I feel like a lot of us probably don't have as many conversations on a regular basis as we did in the old regular world. You know, I made so many friends on the bus, for example, you know, and and I'm an out loud processor in a lot of ways. So just having a lot of people in and out of your experience, you know, I think that's as helpful for your health as a lot of other things too. So we don't have that quite in the same way during this season. So
No, and I'm like you. I love the 2-minute conversation with the person at the essay. I love I for a while in my life a few years ago, we'd spend chunks of time in Ireland. And it's so funny when I'd go back, first people I'd be excited to see were these older ladies that I would see when I walked around the park in the place where I would go get my newspaper. And they'd be like, "Oh, you're back from Indianapolis." I'd say, "Yes, it's Minneapolis. It's really still so, you know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, you know, I'm from the US. That's good enough. But just those conversations and the impact of not having them. It's
yeah. That reminds me of when I was in New York, because you know how people sit on their stoops kind of in Brooklyn. Sometimes there was a couple older ladies who lived across the street from each other, and I got to know kind of both of them walking around, and sometimes I'd get like a hug on my way to work or something, you know, a hug and a kiss, like kind of like motherly or whatever for this older lady down the block. And at some point actually they had a falling out, and so they would sit on the stoops across the street from each other. They wouldn't talk to each other, which is terrible. But but yeah, I mean, definitely just people that I mean, I would make some great friends like that I would see multiple times, sometimes on the bus. There's this guy he works as a doorman down in Uptown, and I even tried to set him up with one of my friends. You know, one of my closest friends from New York I met on the subway, and she says she thinks one of us complimented the other's shirt, and then somehow I think I gave her information. We exchanged information because I suggested a temp agency that she might want to check out. And now, I mean, we've been friends for so long now, and she came and performed here in Minneapolis at the Kitty Cat Club for our reception for our wedding and everything. Nice. So, you know, you never know. Things can start in the weirdest of ways.
It is, yeah. Well, and it's funny because it's in the lack of that, I think that there is a real space for the gravity of the music and the poetry that you produce, because I think I'm always looking for the silver lining of the pandemic, you know, but I think having the time and to do something, you know, to listen to something different, to listen to something that's going to touch you more than you might than you would listen to on the bus, you know, or the conversations that you'd have, you know, we're replacing that with things that are giving us deeper thoughts, and in your work absolutely produces deeper thoughts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask about your live stream? How you had said earlier you get stage fright, and how are you going to approach that, or is it not as
I'm actually not going to be performing live in that situation because we're recording little videos instead. Actually, that was suggested by Kasha Yana, I think her name is. She's a musician that was also on that birthday call with Jessa. And I shared with, it was a lot of musicians actually on the call. And so I just shared, hey, I've got this release coming up, and we've got different options. Like I had my producer provide, like no vocal copies of the songs, so that if Tommy and I wanted to try to do something live and with that playing behind us, we could, or something. Or Tommy had also seen this friend of his did this listening party that Tommy thought was done really well. And what they did was they had these videos on YouTube, and they would they kind of did the intro on the release, and then they would say, oh, we're going to pause it for X amount of minutes so that you can go over, listen to this, and then we'll come back and we'll do Q&A. So so I'm probably pronouncing her name wrong, but Kashimana had said, like, a lot of the virtual performances that she would see, sometimes the quality of the sound wasn't always really good. And so because it's specifically a release of this music and stuff, and we want to highlight that, I thought maybe if we're not trying to, put it on my screen or perform it and somehow have all the sound work out right, maybe if we do it this way, it'll translate better, and everyone will be able to hear it. I am a little concerned for those who it might be hard for them to open another tab and flip back and forth, like if they're not as used to the technology or something. But I'm just, fingers crossed it. We're all learning here, so hopefully we can all figure out a good way to do it. So we will before the release, like we'll post the Zoom information, and then also post the other link. So that's
Can do a test run.
We are going to do a test run. Actually, my friend Kelly has added me to her business Zoom account so that we can do some practicing and figure things out. So it may not be perfect, but we are going to do our darndest to figure out the technology. And I guess it's been done before well, so maybe we can do it again. So, but I do miss kind of shows in the world of yesterday where you could have somebody open for you, and then have the whole, because sometimes there's people you just really want to highlight, but then sometimes when you have so many technical things going on, you don't want to add more to the mix and complicate it more. And plus, people are tired of looking at their screens all day, to be quite honest. So if they're there for you, be thankful. Yeah.
That is well, think of it as you doing your piece for digital inclusion. It's my day job. If you may open a whole new world to somebody, because now they know how to open it. It's funny, but it might be true.
You never know. Just trying to learn it one step at a time. And this just sounded like something that took a little bit of some of the uncertainties out of the process, so that you could have some things up front and kind of have an idea of how it would run more, and not have to worry about technological things going wrong. We'll still worry about things going wrong, but hopefully, since we'll have that kind of stuff recorded, people could then maybe see it separately if they needed to. But so
We'll pick it up.
That's what we're aiming for.
That's what you're aiming for, and you're aiming for that on February 5th.
February 5th. Yep, it'll be at 7 p.m.
Now, tell people who are listening, how can they reach you online then and every day?
Oh, okay. Lots of ways. I mean, I'm on Facebook just under Christy Mary. That's my name, Merry, like Merry Christmas. And Christy is CHRISTY. My Instagram is at CMMERRY. Or wait, is it C? Are there two M's or there's one? Maybe I should double check.
You say it and I'll double check.
Yeah, it's two M's.
Okay.
I think one was probably taken. So it's at CMMERRY. I have a website. It's called just ChristyMary.com. So very easy to remember. Oh, my name shows up here. So I guess I didn't need to spell it for everyone.
I will spell it out in the notes too, but for folks who are just listening, it's kind of nice to have. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So all of those ways are good ways. And I do have a link on my website and my Facebook and my Instagram to get you to the event, right in the profile and whatnot. So it should be fairly easy to navigate to if you're looking for it.
Nice.
So
nice.
And also for those who are local and if you prefer a CD rather than buying it digitally, for the EP, that's also going to be at Eat My Words bookstore in their little friends and family section. They said so that's really nice. And
nice.
Yeah, and I still kind of have to figure out another way to sell the poetry chapbook, but we'll figure that out in time. Maybe I'll start an Etsy store or something, but we'll figure it out.
So. Figure it out. I have faith.
Yep.
I have faith you will figure it out. So
good. We have a little time before we have anything physical in our hands. So
I feel like a solution will come to you. I think that you put it out there in the world and things come to you, and that's a nice way. So something will come.
It's true.
Yeah.
I have faith.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. We will look forward to hear for you on February 5th. And it's been really enjoyable to hear more about the stories, because they're very
thank
they're
you.
deep thoughts. Yeah.
You guys are very good at interviewing, because I felt very comfortable. So.
Oh, good. We're glad to hear that.
I'm a beginner, but I really enjoyed this. So
it's fun to hear stories.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Christy.